All right, welcome, all explorers. You are now watching the Geo Show, and the title of today's Geo Show is Meets Korea, an introduction to Korean culture, brought to you by Learn Around the World. Again, we are using Kahoot on today's virtual field trip. So enter in that game pin at the top of your screen, 773-771 at kahoot.it. So you can use any browser on any device and you'll get logged right in. So we're going to go ahead and test out that technology. How is it working? And we always like to say on the Geo Show is technology is great when it works. So a couple reminders: if you've never played with Kahoot on the Geo Show before, you're going to get 10 seconds to answer a question. Only 10. So make sure you're quick. Also, we're going to have a quiz at the end of the show, and the winner of today's Geo quiz will get a postcard from me from the Learn Around the World studios. Now, don't worry, the first couple questions are just practice questions, so they're not worth points. So if you're not logged in quite yet, that is okay. You'll have a chance to get in. But we're going to go ahead and play. And our first question for today is going to be, okay, we are going to Korea today. So where is South Korea? Does anyone know? Is it red in Asia, blue in Europe, yellow in Africa, or green in South America? All right, so we have lots of different answers, but South Korea is located in Asia. And again, just this is a practice question, so make sure you're quick in the future. You only get 10 seconds to answer it. So Geo Show is a geography-based show. That means location matters. So we're going to go ahead and find out where we are headed on today's Geo Show. And we're going to go ahead and bring up our map so we can go ahead and check it out. As we're doing so, again, don't forget you can get logged in over on Kahoot. Just make sure you enter in that Kahoot pin right down at the bottom of your screen. All right, little technical difficulties, but we are now back up and running. All right. So on the Geo Show, location matters. So where are we going today? Well, if you're watching from the US, not all of you are. We're going to go across the Pacific Ocean, and some of the other places you may have heard of that are near Korea. So this big highlighted country I'm shading in now, so this is China. Over here to in the ocean here is Japan, and then this peninsula right here that I am circling is Korea. And today it's separated into two countries, North and South Korea. Now, those aren't the official names. We'll find out what those are. But we're going to zoom in a little bit closer. So South Korea is the bottom part of the peninsula. So a peninsula is a body of land that's surrounded on three sides by water. And I'm going to circle right here. So this is the capital of South Korea. This is Seoul in South Korea, a very, very large city, densely populated. And that's the location that we're visiting today. If you've never seen it, this is the Korean flag, the South Korean flag. And right in the middle of it, it's a yin-yang symbol, and it has red and blue colors representing fire and water. And the around the corners, each one of these symbols represents one of the elements of the earth, so fire, wind, air, water. I always forget them. And then Republic of Korea is the official name. So some of you may be interested to learn this, but like for example, did you know America is not the real name of America? So a lot of people are surprised because it's just such a popular nickname, but the real name is the United States of America. Same thing with South Korea, is most people just say South and North Korea, but the actual name of South Korea is the Republic of Korea, or the ROK for short. All right. So what we're going to do is talk about the size. How big is South Korea? It's roughly about the size of Indiana if you're from the United States. And the population, so it has quite a lot of people for as small of a country as it is. So there's 50 million people that live in South Korea. If you compare that to the US, now the US is quite a bit larger as far as the size, and there's 320 roughly million people in the US. But if we look at California, California only has 38 million people, and that's one of the largest states in the USA, if not the largest state. So South Korea is smaller than California. The size of the country is smaller than California, but it has more people in it. So it's very densely populated. And if we look at what type of land is in South Korea, not California, it's very mountainous. So about 70% of the country is covered with mountains. So what does that mean? It means that there's not a lot of place to grow crops, and there's not a lot of places to live or have large cities. So if we look over here, I'm going to shade in. This is where Seoul is. So you can get an idea of why out of that 50 million people, most of the people in the country live in this province right here, the Gyeonggi-do province. And so it's very extremely densely populated in this area of the country. All right, so that's the intro to our virtual field trip today, Meet Korea. And we're going to go ahead and pause for 1 minute so we can give a couple shout outs. Now, we don't have any on-camera guests today, so we're going to give some random shout outs. And the first random shout out today goes to Liberty Schools in Illinois, and we're going to give another shout out to Summit Schools in Colorado. So welcome to everyone there. And we're going to again, that game pin is right there if you're not logged in yet, but we're going to continue on with the show. And to do that, we get to use Kahoot again because we have 3 topics today: modern culture, traditional culture, and food. But I want to know from you, explorers, what topic do you want to talk about first today? So to do that, go ahead and use your Kahoot devices again, and we have our first Choose Your Own Adventure topic on today's show. So do you want to talk about red, traditional culture, blue, food, or yellow, modern culture? All right, most of you are saying food. Fabulous choice. I love talking about food, so we're going to go ahead to start our virtual field trip today, and we are going to talk about Korean food. Now, Korean food, there's not enough time on this program to talk about Korean food because it is amazing. So, little pop quiz for everyone in your classrooms. Now, we won't use Kahoot for this quiz, but this is just verbally, so make sure you guys keep your classmates in check. So look to your left, look to your right. Which one of these do you think are Korean chopsticks? Do you think it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? So all but 2 of these chopsticks comes from different countries. So even though many Asian countries use chopsticks, they do not all use the same style of chopstick. So if you are up near your camera, you can put in your answers in the chat box, or you can just yell it out loud to your classmates. And I'm gonna give you 3, 2, 1. All right, so everyone, if you answered number 5, you are correct. So number 5 is Korean chopsticks. And so if you notice, they're the only ones made out of metal. So Korean chopsticks are made of metal. Let's go ahead and get a better picture. Another interesting thing about Korean chopsticks is that they're flats. So they're made flats, unlike many other chopsticks, which are round or either square. Korean chopsticks are flats, as we see on the left. Now, when you use them, I found it difficult to learn how to use Korean chopsticks. So I actually lived in South Korea for 3 whole years. And so I use these every day for my school lunch and outside of school. And because they're flat, they were difficult to learn how to use at first. But once you get the hang of it, I think they work better than many of the other ones, or at least I like them. And maybe it's just because I got good at them. But you can kind of use them like scissors. They slide back and forth really well. and they're made of metal, which is not common as well. So usually when you are eating a Korean meal, you eat family style, so you don't go and order your own dish at a restaurant. Usually you order for the table, you'll order like a main course for the table, say if it's beef or chicken. And typically when you go to a restaurant in South Korea, it's like a chicken restaurant, or it is a beef restaurants. And what you get is you get many sides. So traditionally in a Korean meal, when you eat a traditional Korean meal, you can have 20, 40 different kinds of sides. So, and usually when you go to a restaurant, you don't pay for your side. So you just pay for the main dish. And whenever you run out of a side, you just ask for more, which is amazing, by the way. And the most popular side that you get in Korea is their national dish, which is kimchi. Can everyone say kimchi? Awesome. And here's a little fun fact about kimchi. In Korea, if you're from the US or another country, maybe you say something when you take a picture like cheese. Well, in Korea, they don't say cheese. What do you think they say? They say kimchi. So when you take a picture, everyone freeze, kimchi. All right. Awesome picture, guys. So little fun fact for you there about kimchi. Now, the thing about kimchi is it's kind of like, I explain it kind of like pickles. It's really, there's over 300 kinds of kimchi, but this is the most popular one that we're looking at here when I pull it back up. So this is the cabbage kimchi, and usually if you go somewhere and just say kimchi, this is what you'll probably get. But around the world, it's kind of like pickles. When you ask for a pickle, you're getting a pickled cucumber, but you can pickle anything. You can pickle garlic, green beans, all sorts of things. Same thing with kimchi. You can kimchi many different types of things, but most people think of this, the cabbage, the fermented cabbage. Now, it's a fermented food, and many people rank this as one of the 5 healthiest foods in the world. So it's super good for you. And so what is a dining experience like at a Korean restaurant in Korea? Well, first and foremost, when you walk into any place in Korea, like a restaurant or a school or even a home, you take your shoes off. So you don't wear shoes inside in Korea. So let's go ahead and walk into our restaurants. And this is a duck restaurant, if you just saw that duck head picture. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your shoes off. Usually there's some type of wood around the side of the floor you can go ahead and step up on, and then you're going to place your shoes in the shelving. So they have a whole room for this. Now, when a restaurant's really popular, that entire floor where I just took my shoes off, this entire floor would just be covered with shoes. Sometimes it's really hard to even get in, especially in the wintertime when everyone's having big boots. All right, and you sit on the floor. So not only do you, and this is true for homes in Korea, a traditional home, you sit on the floor, not furniture traditionally. Now this restaurant's a little weird because they actually have little back chairs, but typically most restaurants don't even have these little back chairs. And what's also unique about many Korean restaurants, if we see right here, I'm going to circle these vents over the tables. What do you guys think those are for? Well, if you answered for cooking right at your table, you are correct. So in Korea, usually what you do is you cook your main course right at the table because barbecue is really popular in Korea. And these vents just slide down right over the either charcoal or gas. So right back here, we get to see this is inside of a restaurant. They're heating up the charcoal, and what happens is they bring the charcoal and put it right in the middle of your table, and you cook your beef or chicken or whatever it is that you ordered, duck, maybe right at the table. Another style is a gas table. So you can see here, these are gas pipes running under the table, and we'll kind of get a shot right here. You can see the flame going, and you do need to be careful, explorers. So when you go to Korea, I highly recommend it. I love Korean food and I love Korea. But be careful sometimes when you sit at some of these tables, especially in an older restaurant. The newer restaurants, this is kind of a protective case, so it's not really hot if your knee bumps it. But I've seen some older restaurants that don't have these protective barriers. And so when your knee, you can actually burn your knee if you're not careful at some older places. So just something to be mindful of. So again, you cook the main dish in the center of your table, and everyone eats out of this main dish. Now, this is one of my favorite Korean meals ever. It's called dak galbi, so it's like a spicy chicken, but you just eat right out of the main dish. You may have a little bowl that you can put some in your own personal bowl if you want. And another interesting thing to talk about with dining experiences in Korea is there is a red button down there to the left. Does everyone see that red button right there? Do we have any guesses? What is that red button used for, do you think? Is it used to turn on the stove, or is it used for something else? Well, if you look to your classmates and you said to call the waiter or waitress, then you are correct. So in Korea, what you do is many places have this little button, and when you push it, it's kind of like a doorbell, and as soon as you hit it, the waitress or waiter will come to your table. I think this is brilliant. I wish they had these in the US, and that way they're not bothering you all the time. Even if they do not have one of these buttons in Korea, it's common for you to yell out. So this is another difference to talk about between cultures. In the US, for example, if you're in a restaurant, it would be kind of rude to yell across the restaurant, right, to a waiter. If you just yelled out, "Hey, I need water over here," you kind of wait till they come and see you. Not in Korea. So even if they don't have that button, it is common to yell out. So you just say "jogyo" or "jogi." So if everyone, you can say "jogi," "jogyo," "jogyo." So you just yell out to the waiter or waitress, and they'll come over to you, and that is not rude. So even I was there for 3 years, and it still felt weird for me to do that. And so this is just cheesy bop. So bop in Korean. Can everyone say bop? Awesome. So bop is one of those words that means food in general. So bop can mean all food, or it means rice. So rice is bop in Korean. And this is cheesy bop. So cheesy bop is, so at the end of a dak galbi meal, all those delicious marinated spices and juices that are still in the pan, well, you can order cheesy bop, which they'll fry up some rice and some kimchi rice and cover it with cheese right on the top. Oh, so good. I want to go right now. All right, so that's just a brief introduction to the eating experience at a Korean restaurant. All right, so what we'll do is if we have time, we'll come back here, but we'll go into one of these areas and talk a little bit more about food. Now, most people, so most of you are probably want to talk about candy. So we'll start at candy. And if we have time, we'll come back to some of these other topics after talking about modern and traditional culture. So this is just in a normal candy shop. Now this is typical. So these students here, these are just local middle school students. They're going to eat ramen. So if anyone likes ramen, now ramen in Korea is amazing and way better than the top ramen that you see in most of your stores if you're from the US. But let's take a look at some of the candies that we see at some of the local shops. So you have lots of gum and some things you'll be familiar with. But if I pause it right here, just some of the chips that's common that you see in Korea. There's lots of, now remember, Korea is a peninsula, so they're surrounded on 3 sides by water. So much of their cuisine, much of their food is heavy on seafood. And even in their snacks. So we see here, this is squid, so squid flavored chips right here, which is common, which you wouldn't see much in the US. Right here, this is shrimp flavored, like hot fries. And then some things that you may be familiar with, Snickers, Kit Kats, for example, Twix, Hershey's, for all of our viewers in the US. And then these are fun to talk about. And this is a little bit different when we talk about English. And English is different all around the world. For example, these right here, typically in the US, for all of these you guys are watching, what would you call little chewy bears? Well, I'm sure most of you just said gummy bears. And well, in Korea, they're not called gummy bears, but they're actually called jellies. So these would be jelly bears. And And so that's pretty common when you go to even other English-speaking countries, say Australia, uh, uh, the UK, or anywhere like that. There may be just little bit differences in the words. Now, this is a popular kind of candy. It's called pepero. Pepero is like a biscuit, like a long biscuit or cookie, and it's usually dipped in typically chocolate and sometimes other ones. So here's the original, the red box right here. You can actually find these pretty easily on Amazon if you guys ever want to try pepero. And they even have a day in pepero. So they actually have a holiday, pepero day. And then ramen. So again, I was talking about it earlier. So ramen is a huge snack. You just go into all the convenience stores, have like a ramen station, and kids often before they go, lots of kids in Korea, they leave public school and then they go to private academies right after school. So it's common to see lots of kids hanging out, eating ramen before going to continue their studying. All right, you get an idea of school uniforms. So most schools in Korea, or all of them that I witnessed, all of them wear school uniforms. All right, and just a couple other, some drinks you guys may be familiar with. So Gatorade, Powerade, Coca-Cola. So just to show you an idea of that they do have some things there, Red Bull that you guys may be familiar with. All right, and the prices, this is something that's interesting. So Korean money is called won, and roughly, usually, typically, historically, it's been about 1,000 won equals $1. Now, sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. So sometimes it's 1,100 won equals $1. Sometimes it's like 900 won that equals $1. I did not look it up yet today, so maybe we'll get to it later. But again, Pepero. So Pepero is on November 11th, and Pepero Day is kind of like very similar to Valentine's Day in the US, where you give each other candies. So you give your friends pepero. So you buy pepero and you just give it to your friends on Pepero Day. And you can see why it's on the 11th is because they're kind of like the sticks of pepero make the shape of a one. So it's a good day to pick it out. People even make homemade peperos on the right. And that's just a little brief intro into candy found in Korea. Now we're going to go ahead and pause right here again. For all those watching outside, this is an interactive show, so get your questions sent in early and often, and we'll address those. So coming from Mrs. Levering over in, I believe, France. Do they celebrate Christmas? So yes, Koreans celebrate Christmas, but in a different way. It's not as big of a holiday as it is in other parts of the world, and partly because the Christian religion is not as big in Korea, and so it wouldn't be. And it tends to be more of, it's kind of more of a couple holiday than it is like a family holiday. So if you go out with your boyfriend or girlfriend on for Christmas dinner, it's different. It's different. But it is Korea is very with the presence of, ever since the Korean War, there's been lots of American military, lots of personnel there. So a lot of American culture has seeped into Korea. So you can see it in sports, like basketball and baseball are huge sports in Korea. And Christmas is big, but not anything like that it probably is in France and definitely in the US. So great questions coming in there. Again, don't see anything over on Twitter or coming in from our other classrooms yet. Again, get those questions sent in, and we'd love to answer your kids' questions live here on the show. But until they come in, we'll go ahead and start with another Choose Your Own Adventure question. Now, remember, don't forget to log in over at kahoot.it. That game pin, again, is right there, 773-771 at kahoot.it. So let's go ahead and bring up Kahoot, and we're going to see what you guys want to talk about next. Do you want to talk more about traditional culture or modern culture? It's up to you. It's a choose your own adventure. All right, so we already did food, so choose blue for modern culture or yellow for traditional culture. All right, so most people are choosing traditional culture, so we're going to do traditional next. And also, as we go through, remember, get your questions sent in early and often, your text questions, or also you can use Twitter over here at #GeoShow. So make sure you utilize those if you want to get your questions answered live right here on the show. But while we wait for those, we're going to go ahead and talk about traditional culture. So traditional culture in Korea, it's a very old country, so lots, just really, really, really there's different styles of traditional homes. Um, these are called honiks, and usually the different styles are different types of roofs, and these are going to vary depending on what region you are in Korea. So, for example, these are thatched roofs that were more popular in the south and some of the rural areas in Korea. Whereas the tile ones, like you see here, were more popular around Seoul, and there are other styles as well. Um, this is traditional. Does anyone have a guess what kind of room this is? What kind of traditional room this is? Well, if you said bathroom, you are correct. So Koreans traditionally and in modern times, so even today, it's more common that they squat instead of using a sitting toilet. So some people call them squatty potties today, but so it's a more natural way of squatting, right? So this is a traditional style, which would be just wood, but today it would be made out of porcelain and have a little like a step flush handle that you just step on. Um, and even today, like I said, now if you go into a big bathroom with maybe 5 stalls, maybe 2 of them will be like a Western style toilet seat, and 3 of those will be like a squatty potty, like you see there. And here you get this is a traditional toilet paper, just stuck little bits of paper stuck in between twines that you would use. Now today they use rolls of toilet paper, just like most of you are familiar with. And so the next thing we want to talk about with the Korean home, especially the traditional home, is called a very unique kind of floor heating. So this is called the Ando floor heating. Can you guys say Ando? All right, great. Andol is a brilliant form of floor heating. Korea is very cold in the winter, so very windy, very cold. You get that Siberian winds that come through there. And so what we're looking at is, let's look at this bottom cartoon to the right. So in a traditional home, the home is kind of built raised up off the ground. And the reason they do that is because the kitchen area, when you cook on a kitchen, like a pot in the kitchen, you cook over an open fire. And typically, if we look up here to the left, like normally when you have an open fire, you have a chimney that goes straight up. Well, someone had a brilliant idea in Korea. They said, well, if we just build an air space under the entire floor and put the chimney on the other side, that hot air and smoke running under the floor, if you make it airtight, that will heat up the floor. And the way that they did that is, if you can kind of see here down to your right, is they put stacks of stones or rocks under the floor. I have another diagram too that show that better. So what they would do is they would space out these stones. And so if this is the fire to the left and this is the chimney on the right, so as the hot air moves under the floor, it heats up these stones, and these stones radiate heat into the floor. So the floor is really toasty and warm. So remember that you take off your shoes and you sit on the floor in Korea. Well, one of the reasons you want to do that is because the floor is so warm. It feels so good to sit on a Korean floor in the wintertime. And so this is what a traditional kitchen would look like. So we see our 2 pots there, and right under those pots is where you would build your fire. Here's another style, mountain style home. So even when the kitchen is not inside, you can see up here the roofs in this case are made of bark. And this is a case where the kitchen or the cooking pot would be located outside of the home completely. But again, the fire is right there. So the smoke, the hot air and the smoke are running under the floor to heat it up. So what does that look like? Well, if we go down and take a look inside here, again, this is where you would build your normal wood fire, and your flames of the fire, once they start to get roaring and go, they're going to enter right here. So the smoke and the hot air are going to go out of those vents. It's going to run under the entire like living room typically is the one that they would heat for a smaller home anyways, and come out of the chimney on the other side of the home or the hanuk. And other things to talk about traditionally is we see a lady here. She's wearing a traditional dress. The traditional dress are called hanboks or hanboks, and they're typically made of silk, or today would probably be more polyester fibers that many of them are made out of. But silk traditionally came from Asia, and so silk comes from a silkworm. So the way you harvest it is here we get to see these are silkworms, and their silk cocoons are being harvested. The silk is being harvested from them. And a couple of things here is, one, I'm going to turn the volume up. You can hear some Koreans speaking, so you can kind of get an idea of what the language sounds like if you've never heard it. And also look at her. See what she's using there? She's using those metal chopsticks to pick up the silkworms. All right, so let's check it out.
불량 같은데? 불량이에요. 이거 불량 같은데? 근데 불량 맞아요. 아직 실이 있잖아. 이렇게 실이 있어. 그리고 불량 맞아요. 이거 기름이 뜨지. 맞네. 기름이 뜨네. 기름 떠요. 이거 밑에 묶어내요. 이것도.
All right, so here you can kind of see where that silk is coming up off of each one of these cocoons, and they're harvesting into one thread, and then that would later get spun to make your silk threads. All right, so this is some traditional Korean music. We're going to see a procession walk by us, and you'll see that some of their traditional colors, red and blue as well. You get the idea of those flag colors, and listen to the sounds, very percussion heavy on these processions. And then also take a look at their hats, because they do cool things with their head. All right, watch the guys with the ribbons that are going around on their head. So on their hats, there's a little hinge, and they attach these ribbons up there. And the way that they move their head, they can do really, really cool stuff with the ribbons. So that way they can play their instrument at the same time of doing more aesthetically pleasing things. This is a cool form of entertainment. This is a traditional form of entertainment. It's kind of like slacklining today, if you know what slacklining is, or tightrope walking. So it's a performer that does tricks on this rope. And the ones that I've always seen, I don't know if traditionally it was done that way, but they typically, it's kind of like also like a comedy thing. Like he'll sit up, he'll entertain the audience and tell jokes. But this is called jultagi. So let's check it out.
이번에는요, 좌우 역사운전이라는 모습드리겠습니다.
All right, so it just gives you an idea of what this form of entertainment is like, and very, very much like slacklining today, if you know what slacklining is. And do we have any guess? What are these dirt mounds? Does anyone have a guess of, if we look over here, often when you go hiking in Korea, now hiking is a very big activity in Korea. In fact, I found it very impressive that you go to many hiking trails in Korea, and it's almost like Disneyland because it's so popular. People are out there hiking, very active people. So in the fact, you'll see many grandmothers and grandfathers hiking around, very much more common than in the US. So very active people. And so if you look here to the right, it gives it away a little bit. So these are traditional grave sites. And traditionally, the way that you bury people in Korea is with a mound. So traditionally, you don't bury them and bury them underground. Instead, you build up the ground, you build up a mound above ground over them. And then also, today, most people are cremated. So what you'll do is, but Koreans are very, their ancestors are very important to them. So one of the biggest holidays of the year is so important that to show like the utmost respect. So if your great grandfather or your grandfather had passed away during one of the biggest holidays, which we're going to talk about next, is you would go to their gravesite and actually cut the grass on their mound by hand. And even though that there's weed eaters and other modern day machines that can do this a lot quicker, it's a show of respect to your ancestors, to your elders. And okay, so this is a traditional dress, again, called hanbok. And these, when I taught in Korea, these were my kindergartners. And so on Chuseok, everyone in almost the entire country dresses up in traditional dress. And so it's just quite beautiful, the colors, and it's definitely amazing to see. And that holiday is called Chuseok. And guess what? It's happening right now. All week this week, October 2nd through the 6th is Chuseok. So happy Chuseok, everyone. One of Korea's biggest holidays. The other one that is kind of big as well is the Lunar New Year. And so traditionally they celebrate the Lunar New Year and Chuseok. Those are the two biggest holidays in South Korea. Now, what is Chuseok? Chuseok is like similar to a harvest festival or holiday, which cultures all over the world, almost every culture around the world has some type of harvest festival. What is a harvest? So that word may sound familiar to you. So a harvest is when you've worked hard all year in the fields, in your gardens, you're collecting the fruits of your labor, if you will. So you're going out, you're collecting your corn, your soybeans, all the things that you harvest in the fall. Typically, most cultures have some type of holiday or something that celebrates the harvest. Now, Chuseok is different every year. Last year, it happened mid-September. And when I said Lunar New Year, okay, this is something to keep in mind because Korea traditionally, like many cultures around the world, their holidays are based on the cycle of the moon. So it lines up with the moon cycles, not the calendar that most of us use today that do not follow the moon. Okay, great. I didn't share it. Okay, and so Chuseok's happening right now, definitely. And another thing you do during Chuseok is, again, we talked about your ancestors and your elders being so very important to your family. So almost we talked about all the people that lived in Seoul. It's a horrible time to be on the road in Korea because almost everyone leaves Seoul and they go back to their kind of family's small town, their traditional homes, and they visit their grandparents. You pay respect, you bow to them. And here's something to think about when we talk about bowing. So a lot of people are, especially in the West, so if you're from Europe or the US, you may not be familiar with this, but you don't shake someone's hand when you first meet them in Korea. What you do is you bow to someone. So some cultures may not view this as like, if you think of bowing as only to gods. Well, when you go to Korea, everyone bows to each other all the time. In fact, I still have a habit. Sometimes I see people on the street and I bow instead of a wave. And traditionally, if you are, say, a student and you are, say, you go in to see your principal, to your principal's office, or even your teacher, what you do, a respectful way to bow to someone older than you, is you put your hands over your stomach like this, and you do a full bow. You show utmost respect to people that are older than you. Great. great culture and talking about traditionally there. And again, get those questions sent in to us so we can address some of those live right here on the show. Mrs. Cohen's classroom wants to know is how is shopping in Korea different than shopping in the US? I'm not a big shopper. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that, but I can give you a couple of examples. One is, so earlier we were talking about jellies and gummies. So one thing I find curious is the form of English that is used. So obviously Koreans have their own language, but some because there are heavy influences from the US that are stationed there, there is a lot of English in the country, and it kind of gets changed a little bit to what Americans would think as of English, or people in the US. And a lot of people there call it Konglish. So it's kind of their take on English. And so instead of like a buy one, get one free, when you go shopping, you'll see 1+1. So 1+1 is buy one, get one free. Or you may just see +1. I think earlier in the candy aisle, there was a 2+1. So anytime you see a +1, pretty easy to figure out. The next one is service. So in Korea, service is huge. So service is like little freebies. So when you go shopping into a store, and say you go to buy a phone. Say you go buy a phone, and maybe service would be like free earbuds for your phone or a free case. And sometimes you can even say, ask for service. You can say service, and they'll give you like free little things. So those are some common examples with going shopping. And more so than, say, the US, when you go to Korea, especially Seoul, there's entire shopping districts where it's very traditional, as in like you go to one part of the city for fabrics or one part of the city for electronics. That is changing now with more newer stores when you're talking about like big box stores or stores like a Walmart or things like that. Now they don't have Walmart there, at least I didn't see a Walmart, but there's stores like a Walmart. In France, you may be familiar with, I don't know if you guys have Home Plus. Home Plus is owned by a UK brand, so maybe they have it, maybe they don't. I don't know. All right, so we'll go ahead and really quickly, I'm just going to jump right in and show you just a little bit about some modern culture things that may be different from you and I, where you live in the world, and some interesting talking notes. So one is, we talked about how many people live in Korea, and they live in small spaces. Because of that, most people don't live in the traditional homes any longer. So most people live in apartments, in these high-rise apartments. So this is very common to see in Korea. I lived in one of these in Korea. And because of that, you have companies that they will come and move families in and out of the home. And it's interesting because they use these tall like elevator cranes. So a big moving truck will come, they'll raise up this big elevator right to the window of your apartment, and that's how you move out. So you don't use the indoor elevator, which takes forever. This is amazing. I've seen them move entire families out of an apartment in like an hour. Now, don't worry, that's a baby carrier, but there's no baby in there. It was just left on there. Here's what it looks like when they're raising it up. So when they come to your home, they get the truck in position, and they raise this giant elevator up and put it at your window. Entertainment. So K-dramas are huge all around Asia. I have friends in Indonesia that love K-drama. Reality TV shows. This one, Running Man, was popular when I lived in Korea. I imagine it still is. And Running Man was huge. It's like some comedians that they go around and they do all these like contests, and kind of like the Amazing Race in Korea. And the movies, big movie scene as well. Interesting thing talking about movies, when you go to a movie in Korea, it's assigned seating, which I love, because you go and you buy your ticket beforehand. And this would date me a little bit when I was in Korea, but this when Avengers first came out, the first Avengers. And so you go, and even sometimes they have little kiosks, so you don't even have to go up and order it from a person. You just go up there and find your seat and just push the button, and it spits out the ticket. Really cool stuff. And then you just show up like a minute before the movie starts, and they don't really do um, um, previews as well. So when a movie says it's starting at 2, it starts at 2, which I love. Music, boy bands, huge. You may have heard of K-pop, may be popular where you live. This is Big Bang, Super Juniors, just some of the popular bands when I lived there. My middle school students loved EXO when I was living in Korea. And girl groups are big as well. Girls' Generation, just looking at different styles. So this is one person, and just look at all his different styles. This is a guy named G-Dragon. He's in Big Bang. You can see all the different styles that he has as far as dress. What about Gangnam Style? Does anyone remember Gangnam Style, or have you ever seen the video of Gangnam Style? Well, this song was really interesting, not only because it blew up internationally as far as became very popular, but you may not know the meaning behind Gangnam Style, but Gangnam is an area located in Seoul, the capital city, and it's right there shaded in yellow at the bottom of your screen. In fact, Gangnam means south of the river, so we get to see Gang. Gang means river. Hang, Hangan is the Han River, and so Gangnam, so Num is south. So Gangnam, south of the river, it's right there. This is like the Beverly Hills of Seoul. So this is a really affluent, very rich area of Seoul. And so Gangnam Style was all about people that were trying to have Gangnam Style but could not afford it. So it's people that are eating ramen noodles, but they go out and buy a $15 latte. So the song actually has a really good message to it. But it's funny, not a lot of people know that because they don't know Korean. And so interesting too, modern day. So here are my students. How many of you guys have to clean your schools? What do you teachers think? Do you think students should have to clean schools? Well, it's not common in the US, but here, these are my students. Every Friday, they're cleaning the bathroom here. So every Friday, students clean the classrooms, they clean the bathrooms. And then once about every month or two, they do a big, large school cleaning. So you can see here, they're out doing actual yard maintenance. So I love this, by the way. Some of you students may not. Well, you may be asking yourself, you take your shoes off, you wear school uniforms, how do you express yourself in Korea? Well, in Korea, it's all about your socks. So they have awesome socks in Korea. And teacher told me yesterday it's Socktober this month. I never heard of Socktober, but you know what? Every day is Socktober in Korea because the socks are amazing. A lot of people find this interesting, but couples, this would be very odd in the US, I know, but in Korea, couple clothes, couple outfits are very common. So when you're in a relationship, you wear couple outfits. And so when you go into a store, so you were talking about shopping earlier, or we had a question. So when you go into stores, you see things sold in two. They make a man's and a woman's version of almost every style, so you can buy it as a couple. This goes with shoes, jackets, all sorts of things. Other things you can get as a couple. You can get couple cell phones. They have couple movie seats in the movie theater, couple watches, all sorts of things you can buy couple. All right, so that's just a real brief intro into some of the traditional and modern culture in Korea. What we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and jump right into our Geo quiz for some of you that need to go ahead and run on today. So I hope you guys were paying attention, explorers, because, all right, now every question will be worth points. So make sure you get logged in right there at the bottom left hand of your screen. Game pin 773771 over at kahoot.it. And good luck, explorers. All right, first question. What is Korea's national dish? What is the national food? Is it red kimchi, blue pizza, yellow pepperoni, or green barbecue? All right, it is kimchi. Kimchi. Okay, next question. Are Korean chopsticks made of wood or metal? All right, red for metal or blue for wood? All right, they are made of metal. All right, great job. Tornero's classroom. Okay, next question. At home, Koreans traditionally sit on red tables, blue beds, yellow chairs, or green the floor? All right, Koreans traditionally sit on the floor. Great job, guys. Keep it up. Next question, what is South Korea's official name? Is it red, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, blue, Republic of Korea, yellow, Korea, or green, United Korean States? All right, it is the Republic of Korea. Great job dominating, guys. And lastly, Korean floor heating is called... Is it called red, ando heating, blue, mule, kimbap, yellow, or bop, green? All right, it is called ando, the ando heating. Mule right there, blue is actually water. That's water, guys. All right, great job. So Mrs. Ternera's classroom wins today's Geo quiz. So make sure you send me your school address, and the one and only place you can do that this year is over at learnaroundtheworld.com/prize. Again, learnaroundtheworld.com/prize right at the bottom of your screen. There's a Google form there. Just throw in your school address there and I'll get your postcard sent right out to you. Again, I'm only taking them at learnaroundtheworld.com/prize. And for everyone else, if you need to go on, have a great day. And make sure you check out flipgrid.com/GEOshow for the rest of the week. If you have other questions or fun facts about Korea that you have learned and would like to share with us all, you can go add them over there at our Korean topic. All right, so for everyone else out there, I'll give you about a minute or so for classrooms that are still with us. If you still have other questions, I'm here for you. To answer those. Let's see some other ones that we did not get to possibly. Let's see, Mrs. Levering's students wants to know, or Ellie, sorry, what type of animals are in Korea? So today, remember we're talking about they're really densely populated and there's lots of people living in small amounts of area. So I lived mostly in the city, and when I lived in Korea, and most of the wildlife that I saw was birds. Huge area for birds. Lots of cranes, lots of herrings, blue herrings. And traditionally, there were tigers in Korea, not so much anymore. Loss of habitat. So there may be some tigers in like northern North Korea, but I was not in North Korea. Traditionally, they have a bear in Korea, but there's only one small place in South Korea where there's possibly a few wild bear left. And so it's like a black bear. It has like a white stripe on its chest. So they have those. And of course, small animals, they're going to have plenty of as well. Snakes, I saw snakes there as well. So those are just some off the top of my head. What is their celebration food? Coming from Ellie? Great. So like for example, in Chuseok this week, they're going to make, they use something, the best thing to do is just show you if you guys have time to see this. It's great. So some of the celebration foods that they make in Korea, if we remember, rice is big in Korea. So there's going to be a lot of foods that are based upon rice. And okay, so many side dishes. We talked about kimchi earlier. Rice, bop. They have many different kinds of bop or rice. Duk. So right here, so they'll make sweets out of duk. So what duk is this mashed up rice, and it gets mashed into like a sticky kind of flour, if you will, or they will kind of make, what they'll do is they'll make shapes out of it, and inside there they'll put sesame oil. Some of them will be sweet, some of them will be spicy, just all kinds of different flavors. And so traditionally they don't have a lot of bread in Korea. So here we get to see a video. So this is traditional duk, the way that they make it. And traditionally, many people don't do it this way anymore. Just like many places around the world, we use machines and all this sort of stuff now. But usually what you would do traditionally is you would take a big hammer like this and you mash it down. So this is the way you mash all that rice together. and it makes a kind of a sticky dough, and it's very dense, a very dense, sticky dough, and that you could fill up things. So much of their traditional sweets, like cakes, other things like this, they don't have like a flour-based. The tradition in Korea, they didn't have flour, so they don't have like cakes and muffins and breads and things like that. Now they do have that today, but not their traditional foods. Some other traditional foods. This is like the sandwich of Korea. So these are really, really delicious. They're it looks like a sushi roll, but it's not sushi. They use imitation crab in it, but these are just gimbap. And so gim means seaweed. So it's that seaweed outer wrapping on it. So usually you just go buy these. They're super cheap. You just go to buy a few of these gimbap rolls and go hiking, and that's what you'll eat while you're hiking, which is really delicious. This is a pajeon. Pajeon is kind of like a pancake, but you typically make it with green onions, seafood in it as well. So barbecue in Korea, traditional barbecue, samgyeopsal, is like pork belly. So it's kind of like bacon, like really thick sliced bacon, which is really popular. Galbi. Galbi is like a beef barbecue, marinated beef barbecue. Again, you're cooking all of these meats right at the table in front of you. This is my favorite, dak galbi, which is a spicy chicken. And they even have that duk. Remember that duk that I just showed you? Right there, these are little thin pieces of duk. So they're just chewy rice cakes that are thrown in here as well. Some other ones, bulgogi, which is a kind of beef. And so different kinds. So when you go to a barbecue restaurant, so a little bit different. We were talking earlier when we have our charcoal right in the middle of the table. When we eat our barbecue, it's kind of unique how you do it. So you want to know this when you go to a Korean restaurant. So they'll come out and they'll put new charcoal in at times. If it's running low, if you've been eating in a big group for a long time. So after you cook your meat or your barbecue, what you do is you wrap it up in a lettuce leaf. So you just put it in your lettuce leaf, and some Koreans don't really load up the lettuce leaf. This is kind of when I was first there, I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna put everything in it. But typically they'll just wrap some meat, maybe like a garlic piece in there, and some of the sauce. And you kind of use the lettuce leaf as like your wrap. So for those of you that are used to eating foods with wraps or bread, for example. And you can use some of their sauce, and that would be a way to eat Korean barbecue. Again, you're sitting on the floor, and everyone is eating from the same grill, the same main dish. All right. All right, so looks like we still have a couple of you with us. And we're going to go ahead and, unless I see any other questions, I'm going to check Twitter one more time, but we'll go ahead and wrap up today's show. Again, happy Chuseok, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with me today and learning a little bit more about Korea. So don't forget, it's a great big world out there, explorers, so get out there and see it. Until next time, keep exploring. Bye.